Please.
It's okay.
No.
It's okay. Don't be afraid. I'll miss you.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Mac, and welcome back to a brand new video where we discuss some recent news revolving around Telltale Games and a new developer studio named AdHoc Studios. Today we'll be going over and reading the Variety article that's titled "Former Telltale Devs Form AdHoc Studio Continue Adventure Game Legacy Exclusive." This is some pretty exciting news, and I'm curious what this article could pretty much mean for the future of the narrative storytelling game genre. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's read everything and process everything so that we know what's going on. So basically, the article starts off by saying this: the death of Telltale Games left a vacuum, and the game industry is starting to figure out how to best fill it. While Skybound is carrying The Walking Dead the final season to its conclusion, what happens next for the franchise and games like it is a question mark. A team of 4 Telltale alumni, I don't know what kind of word is that, recently founded AdHoc Studio to carry the interactive narrative torch into the future. 3 members of the team departed Telltale in February 2017 and joined Ubisoft to work on an unannounced project. AdHoc CEO Michael Chung, forgive me if I pronounce that name wrong, spent time at Night School Studio after he left Telltale in 2016. Telltale's history of crunch and long hours may have had a hand in the creation of AdHoc Studio, as the team tells it. According to Nick Herman, AdHoc's chief operating officer, the first discussion of striking out on their own came during a late-night conversation at Telltale. The team had long dreamed of taking interactive narrative beyond what they were doing at the now defunct studio, to do what would require a smaller group willing to take risks. Dennis Lennart and Herman, former Telltale creative directors, and Pierre Charette, again, I don't know how to pronounce these names, a former director of writing, had hopes of forming a new studio at Ubisoft. Unfortunately, that didn't come to fruition, so the trio teamed back up with Chong to build something original of their own. They say this: having to pitch something that ultimately 50 people need to understand and approve means a lot of the more adventurous or risky ideas often die early for a bunch of different reasons. Lennart, AdHoc's chief technology officer, tells Variety, "We liked the idea that it was just the 4 of us, so we'd be able to more confidently wade into unfamiliar wire." Telltale was slow to approve ambitious ideas. Prior to its collapse, the studio had to deal with the Netflix that took years to get off the ground due to internal resistance. While that partnership did bear some fruit in the form of a streaming version of Minecraft Story Mode, the true potential was realized independent of Telltale's involvement. Bandersnatch, an interactive movie in Charlie Brooker's Black Mirror universe, shows how live action and interactive narrative can reach new audiences. It feels like we're at the precipice of a big shift in how we consume media, where the lines between film, television, and games are starting to blur, Charette, AdHoc's chief creative officer, says. With streaming platforms in our homes and cell phones in our pockets, we are in this unique time where the barrier to entry to interaction is gone. So as a group of people whose expertise and experiences come from making interactive narrative that sits in the space between, we feel now is the perfect time to form a studio that focuses on creating content for a new space. AdHoc is targeting the same kind of audience that latched onto Bandersnatch. Streaming television and film viewers are the ripe target, with 139 million Netflix subscribers and 23 million signed up to Hulu. It's the group that AdHoc sees as primed for the work it wants to create. The article further says, people are holding onto their favorite television shows and films in their hands, so what we've understood is to be purely audio and visual experiences and now also haptic by default, Chong says. That should be good news for all creators, since it offers them another dimension which to tell stories, but it should be of more particular interest to game developers, since it's basically what we already do. We don't think of our audience as viewers but as players with agency that can manipulate what we put in front of them. So there's a real opportunity here to be among the early innovators, and we feel like with our partnership, we'll announce that in the near future that we'll be able to make real contributions to the forum. AdHoc isn't ready to discuss its first project or who it will be partnering with just yet. However, the team strongly hinting that it will be an interactive live-action experience. While full-motion video games aren't anything revolutionary, that segment has experienced a small renaissance thanks to Sam Barlow's Her Story, Control Movies' Late Shift, and Big Finish's Tex Murphy revival of Tesla Effect. Making interactive experiences with real actors on the screen is something we've always talked about, Charette explains. We have all backgrounds and interests in film and television, so combining that with our experience in games is something we're exploring right now. Bandersnatch opened the doors for Netflix, which says it'll be making more interactive programs. It also served as proof of concept for what AdHoc hopes to accomplish. All four of the AdHoc founders have backgrounds in television and film. While there have been attempts to seamlessly blending live-action content with interactive elements, it's only recently the technology has developed to the point where it can match what the studio hopes to accomplish. Bandersnatch seems to have scratched an itch that people didn't quite know that they had, Herman says. That's really exciting, and what we want to do is make it clear that live-action interactive is a novelty. It's just an unexplored territory that can be both creatively and commercially viable. For that, we're really excited about what we're doing and who we're working with. And that's a project that we'll have more to say about in the near future. It's that connection to a broader audience that motivated AdHoc to start with an interactive narrative. Their time at Telltale had helped clarify the opportunities and challenges that exist while laying out the welcome mat for those who did not typically identify as part of the core gaming audience. We saw a lot of people who wouldn't traditionally consider themselves gamers connect with what we do, which was exciting, Herman explains. That said, it did create a little tension trying to develop developing for traditional gamers while keeping things simple enough for people who are new to the idea of interacting with their entertainment. It's really important to know who your audience is and to get them the balance that they're looking for. Telltale's The Walking Dead was revolutionary, winning numerous Game of the Year awards, but the studio started to see diminishing returns from the adventure game genre it helped revitalize. Despite a variety of different licensed intellectual property, compelling characters, and snappy writing, the samey gameplay kept Telltale from evolving its offerings. In its last years, the studio was accused of reducing the genre to a formula. I think that the genre's reputation is largely deserved, as Chang says. Luckily, we've had the good fortune of working on titles that are cited as exceptions to the rule. Games are just really difficult to make, and more often than not, the developers end up having to prioritize in ways that aren't conducive to a great narrative. For us, the narrative is the game. Just that small difference in priority should yield interesting results. Part of breaking out of that box is using tools that are better suited to the task. Telltale was on the verge of leaving behind the aging Telltale tool engine in favor of Unity. The transition created a number of challenges but would have positioned the studio to expand its options. The AdHoc team is unwilling to say much about their reasons for departing Telltale. Challenge left in October 2016, with others stayed on February 17th, or stayed on until February 2017. A month before Kevin Bruner was ousted by Telltale's board. I think that we will look back at our time there. The memories are mostly happy ones, Herman says, but at a certain point you just get the sense that the party's over and it's time to move on. Despite remaining largely quiet about their time at Telltale, there's a sense that the AdHoc team wants to correct one of the biggest complaints about Telltale's senior management. The studio, especially under the co-founder Kevin Bruner's leadership, had a reputation for stifling creative talent to the point that people like The Walking Dead's Jake Rodkin and Sean Beneman opted to leave. I'll just say that because we're creatives ourselves, we will really be focusing on the recognizing, empowering, and ultimately retaining creative talent, Chang says. Despite embarking on this interactive narrative project as their inaugural project, AdHoc doesn't see itself as limited to that genre. They want to put emotional engagement at the center rather than a particular playstyle. Working at Telltale for as long as we did, you can kind of get stuck into thinking that you're only working on this very specific band of choice-based games, Leonard says. Between the four of us, we've gone to work with both AAA and indie studios, and what we found is that a lot of what we learned at Telltale still applies to a much broader set of experiences. Games are a series of choices. The trick is making them meaningful. Sometimes those decisions impact the moment-to-moment gameplay, like picking up the right weapon or skill upgrade for a situation. Other drives the narrative, fostering deeper relationships between the player and non-player characters. AdHoc sees choices at the heart of the games it plans to develop. Most of our conversations center around maximizing the dramatical potential of those kinds of moments, while making sure that people still feel agency and responsibility over what's going on, Herman says. That ethos has impact that can reach far beyond the interactive narrative, all the way into action games including first-person shooters. While that's not in the cards right at launch, Chang doesn't want to pigeonhole AdHoc Studio to that idea. He simply says, let's not rule anything out. Now, this was a very interesting article to see some old Telltale developers or old members of the Telltale crew decide to come together and make their own AdHoc Studio after not being able to successfully create a narrative genre company at Ubisoft. It raises a lot of the questions, like, well, Skybound took over the final season, but what's going to happen to Telltale's previous Walking Deads? I mean, Skybound hasn't brought him back up on Steam. There's no No information about whether or not it will come up on the Epic Games launcher. So let's just say, for some reason, AdHoc Studios get the licenses to The Walking Dead to maybe put the previous seasons up. Or other questions about other fan favorites, like The Wolf Among Us 2. Maybe, or potentially, can AdHoc Studios get the licenses and the rights to that game, and then develop that game and release it out to the public? A bunch of other different types of projects that have been canceled that Telltale was in the middle of creating or was planning on creating, that have been canceled before the departure and the mass studio closure. Could they potentially be titles and licenses that could be taken by AdHoc Studios? And I think all this information about wanting to expand more than just like story and stuff, like maybe implementing the choice bases and like FPS games and stuff, I think that's gonna be very exciting for the future of gaming. I feel like making like first-person shooters or campaigns with actual choices that can actually matter and change the progression of the game, besides like your maybe, let's just say, your typical Call of Duty campaign that literally just you follow the story as it's already panned out to be, or like Rockstar's like method of pretty much having you complete everything as already pre-made. So could it be interesting and cool to see that maybe they implement some of the choices mattering in these different types of games? That will be very cool. Overall, I'm extremely happy to see that a lot of these Telltale developers are actually, standing up and picking themselves up after the massive studio closure that left a lot of them devastated. A lot of these developers and workers from Telltale have gone to a bunch of different companies, going ranging from like Ubisoft or Epic Games, or a bunch of smaller indie or AAA title companies. And it's cool to see a lot of them people to pick themselves up and join more companies, better suited companies. And it's also cool to see a lot of them, make their own businesses, make their own studio. Overall, this is extremely exciting news, and I feel like only good can kind of come out of this. I am interested though about how Skybound is going to turn out though, because Skybound is the owner of the final season of The Walking Dead. But what are they going to do with the previous Walking Dead titles? Or will they keep the final season, or will they keep will Skybound themselves continue the Walking Dead series? Will they be developing their own Walking Dead games after Clementine's story ends with their own characters, or potentially will AdHoc get or work with Skybound Games or Skybound Interactive to get licenses to Walking Dead, so that they will be able to make their own Walking Dead games? It's a bunch of interesting type of things that can come up from this, and I'm extremely excited to see where everything goes from here. That being said, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I'll be leaving down below the link to the article, and I will also be leaving AdHoc Studios Twitter, so if you want to give them a follow, support them, and see where they go from here, as I will also be keeping an eye on what they're doing with their projects and what they plan on doing in the future. And that being said, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you guys did, and you want to see more videos from me, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, that's even more important. And if you're feeling really good today, hit the notification bell, or even share the video, as that would be extremely appreciated as a subscription or a like. So yeah, that's gonna be it for me. Thanks for watching. I will talk to you guys all later next video.